feels to be up there for a long duration. You know, in terms of advice, Bob and Doug have been great mentors for me. They've given me advice for so many years. It's strange to be the one who could be in a position to offer them anything. But I would say that as, you know, shuttle flyers, they used to participate in missions that were really, really intense, go, go, go all the time. Long duration space flight is more of a marathon than a sprint. So I would tell them to take that moment, enjoy it, and, you know, really welcome the opportunity to have part of your mission be taking it all in and sharing that with the people that got you there.
Thanks again, Christina. Always a pleasure to hear from you and fantastic words. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you. My pleasure.
So once again, once Bob and Doug arrive at the station, they'll be greeted by astronaut Chris Cassidy. But before we do that, let's toss to a brief...
Alright, give me just a sec, y'all. Alright, if you guys are watching, give me just a second. I am posting out things. Alright, let's see here. Where's the next one? Here we go.
Hello, everyone. I'm astronaut Chris Cassidy, commander of Expedition 63 on board the International Space Station, flying 250 miles above the Earth. Like you, I'm excited about today's launch and the possibilities it'll bring to America and to the world. But also, I'm very excited that two close friends will be arriving and joining the crew. I had the privilege of flying with Doug Hurley on both of our first shuttle missions back in 2009. Together, we came to the International Space Station and helped construct the amazing facility that it is today. Although this will be my first mission with Bob, it was my honor to follow him as the chief of the office when he left back in 2015 to begin training for this amazing mission. Personally, I've been very fortunate to fly in two different spacecraft. Launching from America on the shuttle, and most recently launching from Kazakhstan in the Soyuz. But I can't tell you how exciting it is to know that we're once again launching Americans from the coast of Florida. And finally, here's a story I'd like to share with you. Back in 1981, John Young and Bob Crippen launched on Space Shuttle Columbia, the very first space shuttle flight, marking the last time we flew Americans on a brand new vehicle.
Alright, all the things have been put out now.
An American flag representing America's technical prowess. Years later, that same flag was flown to the International Space Station. This flag remains here today, waiting for Bob and Doug. Our flag means so many things to our country, and this small piece of America represents what we'll be able to achieve together. We'll never stop exploring. And so Bob and Doug can take this very special flag home to Earth, where it awaits its next journey to the cosmos. In a few years, the first Orion crew will take this flag with it around the moon. All of this starts today. I'll be watching outside the window, along with everyone else in America and around the world. I can't wait to look out the window and see my friends on close approach. Go Falcon 9, go Dragon, and go Bob and Doug. I'll see you soon.
And that was a very special message from NASA astronaut Chris Cassidy. Right now, the lone American aboard the International Space Station, so he will be ready and waiting to welcome Bob and Doug when they arrive tomorrow, if liftoff happens today, a little later tomorrow morning. The countdown now stands at T-minus 1 hour, 25 minutes, 54 seconds, and counting until launch. And we'd like to share with you just how much has happened here at Kennedy Space Center since the last time we had a crew on the pad launching from here. As you can imagine, the end of the shuttle era was a bittersweet moment for many people across this spaceport. But in the end, we knew we were striving for this day, and here we are. Joining us now is Kennedy Space Center's Deputy Director, Janet Petro, on the comeback we've seen across Florida's Space Coast. She's with Daryl Nail now at OSB-2. Daryl?
Thank you, Marie. Janet, you were just telling me you were there at the crew walkout. Tell me a little bit about what...
Alright, so we're about an hour and 30 minutes away from launch.
Very historic. It was very emotional. So when Doug and Bob first came out of the door,
If you guys have any questions, I'll try to answer them as to what's going on.
was there, Elon was there, the crew families was there, and of course Bob, myself, and the rest of the center leadership was there to cheer them on. But then, when they came out, and then they went to the families, and Bob Behnken said, virtual hug, and he shouted out, virtual hug, and he did this motion, and of course his child also did that virtual hug, and so I guess that's the tradition of doing a virtual hug with the families. And then they, then they walked and got in the Tesla. Either side, the family walked right up to the window of the Tesla and were talking, having a private last moment with their father, hand on the window. It was very emotional. I had tears in my eyes. I don't know how many other people had tears in their eyes, but it was really a special, emotional moment, and everybody was, of course, wishing them well. A lot of I love yous, a lot of Godspeeds, a lot of Ad Astra, take care, all of that. So it was very special.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And in the context of why it's so important, Janet, you remember, you've been here since 2007.
Yeah.
You were here in 2011 when Shuttle Atlantis came to wheel stop. I've talked to my uncle and father who worked out here. Layoff notices went out like the next day when the shuttle came to a stop. It was a very sad time. Bob Cabana, director here, called it depressing. Tell me about that time and how far we've come.
Yeah, so
I saw the trailer on Season 4 in Modern Warfare. It was epic. Okay, I'll have to look at the trailer for it later.
Working on the Space Shuttle program. So 135 flights, all of them launching from Launch Complex 39, many from 39A, where we're going to be launching from today, and then returning back. At the shuttle landing facility, those two iconic sonic booms was something that all along the Space Coast people really resonated with. They really felt in their hearts and looked forward to. So it was a very sad time, but I will tell you that 30-year program, we had planned for it. The workforce was incredible. There was a lot of people who, as I said, spent their entire career here, and they wanted to safely fly that shuttle out, and then they retired. There was also another large group of people that just wanted to put on their resume that they had been privileged to work on the space shuttle. So the workforce I was incredibly proud of, because they were resilient, they were dedicated, they were committed to safely flying out that shuttle. They didn't skip any steps, and regardless, as you said, that they knew they were getting their layoff notices. I think it landed on a Wednesday. They were getting their layoff notice on a Friday. They were in it till the end to make sure we safely flew it out. And of course, we had 14,000.
Alright, I'll be back in just a minute.
Today, you remember those last shuttle flights, everybody around the country wanted to be a part of that experience, and we at the center really leaned forward to maximize how many people we could get both on site, and never mind how many people were lined up at the beaches all along the river to watch that last flight. And of course, today with COVID, unfortunately, we weren't able to have any on-site guest operations, which was pretty sad for this historic flight. But I'll bet that there's a ton of people watching from the beaches or from even their TV as we launch here today.
Sure there is, and tribute to your leadership and Bob Cabana's as well, getting things turned around here as a multi-user spaceport, getting the commercial entities in here. We appreciate all that you've done to make that happen. Janet, we appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Daryl.
All right, Marie, we'll toss it back to you.
All right, thanks, Daryl. And as NASA and SpaceX have worked for years to get to this moment, today's mission opens the door to an entirely new era in human spaceflight, not only for astronauts, but someday for the general public as well.
From the beginning, it has been our mission at SpaceX to help make humanity a multiplanetary species. And today's mission is an important step towards that goal. The key to opening up space access for people like you and me is reusability. Without it, traveling to space is just far too expensive for the average person to do. Imagine how expensive a flight from LA to New York would be if you had to throw the plane away after a single trip.
A lot.
Yeah, exactly. That ticket would cost hundreds of millions of dollars, and almost no one could ever afford to fly. Both the Dragon spacecraft and the Falcon 9 rocket are designed to be reusable, which not only improves the reliability of the vehicles in that they're flight proven again and again, but it also drives down the cost. This is essential to enabling not just a handful of people, but rather hundreds of thousands of people to get out there and to explore the moon, Mars, beyond. And I, for one, is my dream to visit Jupiter's ocean moon, Europa. Leland, you're one of the lucky Earthlings that's had the opportunity to get off the planet and go explore. Where would you like to go next?
You know, Lauren, I think I would like to go to Mars and, be there for, about a year each way and then a year on the Martian surface. But the one condition I would have to have, my pups would have to go with me. Because it's about exploring new places, but taking your family with you. We have these crewmates that are people that you get to know and love, over the course of training, but it's nothing like having your family with you. And I think that's something that we're going to see in the future, people living and working on other planets as a family.
And there are a lot of people who want to see your dogs with you in space.
Well, we've seen them in an official portrait. I know that the dogs came in with you to take a picture in your spacesuit back in the day.
Yeah,
There it is.
We kind of snuck them in, no dogs allowed at NASA.
Well, they had their moment. And knowing that the opportunity to fly to space as a private citizen or a dog maybe one day is right around the corner, we have a new poll question on Twitter for you. So if you give it an opportunity...
Alright, I am back. Sorry about that. I had to go get food and prep myself for this historic event.
All right, well, there is not a lot of cargo.
Didn't the first one blow up? I think you're thinking of Apollo. I know the first demo test of this craft was unmanned.
Entitled Humankind by Los Angeles artist Tristan Eaton. These indestructible double-sided paintings are made from gold, brass, and aluminum, and they celebrate how far humanity has come, as well as how far we still have to go. It includes a beautiful homage to the Saturn V rocket, as well as a nod to Bob and Doug's current ride to space. You can find more images and information about these pieces on SpaceX's social.
Okay, this pizza's cold. Give me a second, y'all. Oh, and thank you for spoiling which operators are going to be in the next Modern Warfare. Like I said, I hadn't seen the trailer yet, so thank you for doing that.
Each graduate's photo was used to create a mosaic image of the planet Earth, which we printed and is being flown aboard Bob and Doug's flight on the Crew Dragon spacecraft. We received nearly 100,000 photos. So thank you and congratulations to all the world's graduates.
I am so proud of what we're doing today. And I think about regular people flying in space on a SpaceX rocket one day. When I first went to space, I thought my primary task of installing the Columbus Laboratory would be my aha moment. But it was when Peggy Whitson invited us over to the Russian segment to have a meal. She said, "You guys bring the rehydrated vegetables, we'll have the meat." And we're doing this, having this meal, and it's with African American, Asian American, French, German, Russian, the first female commander, breaking bread at 17,500 miles an hour, going around the planet every 90 minutes. And when I think of that perspective shift that I got, looking out the window, flying over my hometown, flying over Leo's hometown in Paris, flying over Yuri's hometown in Russia, it brought us all together as a civilization. And I think that's what spaceflight does for us. The more people that have the opportunity to go to space will feel like it's an international family of people working together for the good of humanity and all humankind.
Absolutely, and it's exactly what that piece of art was all about.
Yeah. And following today's mission, we will be one step closer to a future where we can all have
Alright, I'm back again. That pizza's warmer now.
and the ability to just over an hour from now, Bob and Doug will be the first people to launch on an American vehicle in almost a decade. For the team at SpaceX, it's really hard to put into words how honored we feel about the trust that Bob, Doug, and NASA have put into our team to carry out this critical mission. I worked on Crew Dragon for 2 years, and I can just imagine what all of my friends and colleagues are thinking right now as they sit in anticipation and excitement for what's to come.
Absolutely. And speaking of those who have carried the hopes and dreams of science and exploration, we have a few shout outs to share with you from some big fans of NASA and SpaceX.
Wow, we're making history again.
William Shatner! Yes!
Well, good luck. I know you'll be fine. I'll be watching, and we got everything crossed, arms, legs. I'm tied to the knot. Can't wait for you to get back safe.
This is the first time a U.S.-built rocket has taken people into space in 9 years. It's quite an accomplishment. So for us at the Planetary Society, more rockets means more exploration. More people in space means more exploration. More countries involved in the endeavor of spaceflight means more exploration. This is how we know the cosmos and our place within it. So congratulations, SpaceX. Here's wishing your team and the crew especially a safe journey and the joy of discovery. Let's go.
And a big thanks to William Shatner and Bill Nye for those well wishes. And while we're keeping an eye on the pad, we want to bring in NASA astronaut Rex Walheim. If that name rings a bell, it's because he flew 3 space shuttle missions to the International Space Station, including the final one by Atlantis, STS-135. He was one of the last 4 people to ascend the tower of Pad 39A and head to space, and he currently is Deputy Director of Safety and Mission Assurance at Johnson Space Center in Houston. Rex Walheim, thanks for joining us. You and Leland actually flew together.
Hey, Rex Dog.
Hey, Bill Dog.
Rex, you flew on the final shuttle mission, he sent STS-135 with Doug, in fact. What's it like seeing him in Crew Dragon right now?
Great. This is what we've been looking forward to. After the end of the shuttle program, it was a very important time where we wanted to transition to this commercialization of spaceflight to allow these commercial companies to take our astronauts to and from the space station. So in the 9 years we've had since we last landed on Atlantis, we really worked hard for that. We worked with our SpaceX partners and our Boeing partners, and here we are, day to day. We're taking that first step in this new era.
What do you remember most about launch day for STS-135?
I think it was just you felt the weight of it. The space shuttle was a storied program, 135 flights, and thousands of people poured their lives into this program to launch probes to the planets, to launch the Hubble Space Telescope, and then of course to build the International Space Station. So you knew the incredible accomplishments this program has. You wanted to finish strong. And then when it finally became launch day, you finished the study, you worked really hard, and now it was time to kind of soak it in. And I think that's what Bob and Doug are doing right now. They're sitting on the vehicle, talking to each other, listening to the sounds, and feeling the vibrations as it starts up. And it's going to be a...
Can you imagine what it would be like to just sit there for hours, though? I mean, I'm sure they're
What is your take on private
they're
astronauts in
prepping themselves and whatnot.
I think it's great.
But just sitting there waiting for the countdown for hours like that.
The better we are. And I think that's part of this whole program. You get the cost down. Then
I don't know if it would feel like, time flies by waiting for the countdown, or if they would just be sitting there and, just... Hey, Toko Star. But as I was saying, I can't imagine what it would be like sitting there. It would be like, would it time fly by, or would every second seem to last a minute before launch?
Rex, a very serious question. The worm or the meatball?
Leland, I saw you just in the wormer, and how can you do that? The worm is awesome. I'm so glad to have a NASA worm to bring you back. It's great.
All right, well, thank you very much, Rex. We appreciate you. And as we watch Bob and Doug there in the capsule, we are an hour, 10 minutes.
It's like being in a bed. They're at a 90-degree angle.
We're going to send it over to
Well,
Jesse?
fun fact, if you guys have ever been to Alabama and been to the Air and Space Museum, they have a replica of the Apollo capsule that you can actually sit in. And so I know what it's like to at least kind of sit in one of those. I mean, obviously, you know, just as a mock-up, but I was more referring to, like, what could be going through their head at this moment.
Which is the person who will speak to them directly throughout the entire mission, as well as the launch director in Florida. This is where they are checking their comm path through both ground stations and the tracking and data relay satellites that will use to talk to the crew the entire way to the station.
That's right, and after those suit checks were complete, the closeout team was able to seal up the hatch, which also got its own leak check, and we confirmed that it was good to go. The closeout team at this point has already departed the area around the pad. They were about 25 minutes ahead of their schedule. Right now, weather operators are kicking off their final check on wind speeds at the pad, which are going to be used, and they're really important for that final go, no-go for launch. Before we get to that final go, no-go, various teams at both NASA and SpaceX are going to do some internal go polls, just making sure conditions are good with Falcon 9, the Dragon, the crew, the range, and the space station before the final go is given. So let's check back in with Houston real quick for a status on the team there supporting the space station on their readiness for launch.
What if it go boom? You shut up. Don't be talking like that.
In Mission Control Houston, led by Flight Director Zev Scoville, has been pulled, and we're go for launch. Also, stations that are required to be healthy for the mission are reported good, and we're standing by. Station power and communication systems are looking healthy. Life support systems and thermal conditions are normal. And the trajectory is right on track to ensure that Dragon's flight will meet right up with the orbiting complex as planned. Chris Cassidy aboard the International Space Station is finishing up some tasks, going into his pre-sleep period, and will be able to watch the launch of Bob and Doug. Mission Control Houston will largely be in monitor mode for the first 18 hours of the flight, with the team here really jumping into the mix tomorrow when Dragon gets in range of the International Space Station, and we begin integrated operations. So I'll send it back. Everything's green on our board from the International Space Station. Go Falcon 9, go Dragon, and Godspeed to Bob and Doug.
All right, thank you, Gary. If you are just now joining us, you picked a really good time because we are 1 hour, 8 minutes and counting away from launch. This is our coverage for this mission known as Demonstration Mission 2, or Demo 2. Liftoff time still holding for 4:33 p.m. Eastern. Tracking no issues with Falcon 9 or Dragon, and we're still waiting for that weather to hopefully cooperate. We're still tracking a few things like precipitation and flight through clouds. We're hoping that clears within the next 20 minutes or so. Over the last 3 hours, our crew members, Doug Hurley and Bob Behnken, donned their SpaceX suits in the historic crew quarters suit-up room and made their way out to Launch Pad 39A. They walked out of the crew quarters building just as every astronaut to fly from this spaceport has done since Apollo 7. They were transported to the pad where the crew, now on board the Crew Dragon spacecraft, and we're continuing to get views of them inside that cabin live.
Today is a historic launch. It will be the first time a commercially built spacecraft will launch people into orbit, and the first time since the U.S. has sent people to the space station from American soil since 2011 with the retirement of the Space Shuttle program. Over the next hour, we will conduct a series of polls to get ready for launch, have Bob and Doug arm the launch escape system, and begin fueling Falcon 9.
Well, Elon will be kissing the ground. I don't think he's going to be able to sleep until they land back in the ocean safely.
Dock with the International Space Station at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time tomorrow.
Today's mission is the culmination of years of work between the teams at SpaceX and at NASA. Demo 2 is going to be an end-to-end flight test. We're going to start with launch today, go all the way to docking with the space station, and then when Bob and Doug come home, splashing down in the Atlantic. And this is going to be the final test for NASA to certify SpaceX for regular crew flights to the space station.
And we've been hearing a little from the crew on board Dragon, which they are currently strapped into their seats, as you can see on your right screen. They're already through their seats, or they've already been.
You know, it's actually really interesting to think that, you know, about 50 years ago, we landed on the moon, and, you know, the ship was, of course, all knobs and dials, and now we're up to the age of touchscreen and whatnot.
just wanted to take a pause to listen into the nets.
Okay, we appreciate that, sir.
So they'll be getting insight into all of the Dragon and Falcon 9 systems as we proceed towards launch. At T-minus 1 hour and 7 minutes, let's check in with John Insprucker for a status update on both of those vehicles. What's the update, John?
Well, the good news is we've had a smooth countdown this afternoon. The SpaceX team is working no technical issues on either the Falcon 9 or the Dragon spacecraft. For the Falcon 9, operators have they're actually still in work. They're going to complete in a few minutes propulsion checkouts that are being done on both the first and second stages. The team will be assessing their launch readiness with a final go, no-go call. That'll come at T-minus 45 minutes, and that'll be followed by propellant loading starting at T-minus 35 minutes. Now, earlier today, Dragon operators performed a series of checkouts of Dragon's flight systems. The spacecraft is also currently go for launch. Our NASA crew, astronauts Doug Hurley and Bob Finken, that you can see inside the Dragon capsule on the right-hand side of the display, they are currently going through various screens, simple checks. Their hatch is closed, suit loop checks are complete, pump checks are good.
I'm still between in believing that landing on the moon and thinking the Earth is flat. Oof.
Monitor up alongside the Dragon capsule. That's going to happen somewhere between 45 and 42 minutes before liftoff. Now, the big one right now is the range. The range is currently red for launch from historic Pad 39A. Now, the air and the sea space is clear, and the worldwide network of ground stations, as well as the tracking and data relay satellites, they are ready to support Dragon as it heads into orbit. But the range is red for the weather. We recently did clear, we went green for lightning, but we are still violating several constraints. Rain, cumulus clouds, field mills, which is essentially you can tell that the atmosphere is energized around the launch site. We are expecting that we'll possibly clear that. We're going to hear a weather briefing at 1 hour with the expectation that those conditions may clear shortly afterwards and allow us to move into propellant loading. Also, we've been releasing balloons. What we're seeing at the upper altitudes is conditions look good for Falcon 9 with Dragon. No concerns have been expressed by the GNC guidance team right now. Now, as a reminder, today we have an instantaneous launch window at 4:33:35 Eastern Daylight Saving Time, or just past 33 minutes after the upcoming hour. So we get one chance at it today. But currently, T-minus 1 hour and 3 minutes, just passing that. Falcon 9, Dragon are go. The range is ready to support, but now we're waiting on the weather, as we've been expecting all afternoon.
Thanks, John. We've got an extensive history now of flying Falcon 9 from the Florida coast, and just last year completed a test run of the mission that we're less than an hour from beginning here today.
The purpose of that mission was to demonstrate Dragon's capability to safely and reliably fly to and from the International Space Station. The success of Demo 1 was a really exciting moment, and it paved the way for today's mission, where we are just moments away, hopefully if we get that weather, from flying U.S. astronauts from U.S. soil for the first time since 2011.
Dragon and Falcon 9 together have years of operational experience, or what we refer to as flight heritage. As I mentioned earlier, SpaceX has successfully completed 21 flights of Dragon to and from orbit since 2010, including 20 trips to the International Space Station. Not only have we conducted thousands of hours of testing, we've also enhanced and added a number of safety features to Dragon.
Much of what was learned with the Cargo Dragon was leveraged in the design of this vehicle.
Cycling is complete, expected behavior, and wanted to hear if you were able to hear those.
We actually did, Jay. We were just making a comment about that. I heard some clicking, and when Bob launched it on the systems display, so absolutely.
Copy all.
And that again right there, that's the crew talking to the Corps here in Hawthorne, California, who's going to be talking to them throughout their ascent uphill today. So they were just doing a quick checkout. Bob and Doug confirmed they were able to hear it. Sounds like everything's still good, so still no issues with Falcon or Dragon. Back to what we were talking through as we're describing these systems, a lot of what SpaceX did with Cargo Dragon has been leveraged into this Crew Dragon. The vehicle is designed to be fully autonomous, which means it can basically fly itself. But also features a full manual override capability if the crew needs to take control in case of emergency.
Many of the other enhancements help towards SpaceX's goal of reusability and less refurbishment time
All right.
between missions. So let's take a closer look at
Almost an hour away.
Standing at almost 27 feet tall, from bottom of the trunk to top of the nose cone, Crew Dragon's composed of two main elements. We have the capsule up top, which is designed to hold the crew and any pressurized cargo, and then an unpressurized section known as the trunk on the bottom.
the nose cone at the top of the capsule protects the docking system as well as the guidance navigation control system, or what we call GNC. The nose cone opens for docking and remains attached to the Crew Dragon spacecraft, unlike the previous version of Dragon, and that helps towards our reusability
Dragon
efforts.
SpaceX, we are at T-minus 1 hour. We will go for Section 6. When ready, we report go for launch.
SpaceX Dragon will put Section 6 in work.
So the crew just has a couple checks, and when they are ready for launch, we're going to hear them report to the core that they are go for launch. Continuing to walk you through the Dragon spacecraft, opposite of that nose cone is the trunk. We can see
Toko, to be fair, most of the rockets in the past have typically flown themselves. They would do most would do like little manual adjustments, but the initial launch is usually done automated.
Outside, one half of the trunk contains a radiator that rejects heat from the active thermal control system into space using SpaceX's new p-tiling technology. The other half contains solar cells that are used to charge the spacecraft's batteries during flight.
SpaceX Dragon, Bob and I are go for launch.
And you heard that call out right
Copy,
there.
go for launch. Next up will be the go, no, go forward, T-minus 45.
Bob and Doug are go for launch, and next
Copy,
up,
we're holding in step 6.5.
you're hearing it live from the nets. This is amazing, very exciting. The spacecraft is designed to accommodate up to 7 crew members with modular seats that can be removed and replaced by additional cargo. The seats are made of carbon fiber and will be custom sized for any crew members flying on board.
Oh, well, that's neat.
The panel that's centered between the pilot and commander seats consists of 3 touchscreen displays, and that just again allows the crew to operate the vehicle and fly it manually, but also look at all of their procedures, relative position over the Earth, the space station, any alarms, alerts, anything that they could possibly want to do on Dragon is through those touchscreens.
Toko, they do have they can override control. Now during the initial launch, it's completely automated. And then once they are going to dock to the ISS, it's going to be completely automated. But they do have override controls, so if they need to, they can dock with the ISS manually.
Operational SpaceX crewed mission for NASA will be a little bit later this year after Bob and Doug come home. NASA astronauts Mike Hopkins, Victor Glover, and Shannon Walker, and Soichi Noguchi of the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency, or JAXA, were chosen to support this mission, being called Crew 1.
Today, Doug Hurley is the spacecraft commander for this mission. He previously flew on 2 space shuttle missions as the pilot on STS-127 and STS-135, which was the final space shuttle flight. Here's a closer look at Doug Hurley.
Please review your launch commit criteria. Again, this is to review and confirm a violation of launch commit criteria. We are tracking one issue with weather still. And we'll track that all the way down to launch to clear that. This will also go for arming the launch escape system and go for propellant.
And this is the countdown and reporting that technical poll was completed. All systems are proceeding. We're monitoring the weather as I'll be briefed. We're also looking at a launch item on a hydraulics QD rod ring. Ring pressure will come up at -8 minutes 30 seconds, and we'll be able to verify decay rate. No concerns at this time. Everything's reading nominal, but watching that item. No other constraints on Falcon 9 or ground systems.
Stage 2 RB1 bleed is complete.
Whew. I'm not gonna lie, I'm actually getting kind of nervous, but I can't even imagine what they're going through. Alright, 55 minutes.
Just crossed the 55-minute mark away from launch. Sitting right next to Doug Hurley, who's closest to your screen, is NASA astronaut Bob Behnken. He is the Joint Operations Commander for Demo 2. Behnken previously flew on 2 space shuttle missions, STS-123 and STS-130, and also served a tour as Chief of the Astronaut Office. So here's a little bit more about the man who said testing out a brand new spacecraft is an astronaut's dream.
When you go through the launch day preparations, there's a lot of moments that kind of stand out to you. One is the kind of the celebratory piece of it, which is that you're walking out of the suit-up room and getting in the vehicle that's going to take you to the launch pad. When you close the hatch, that's really when Doug and I are in the vehicle, and it's our vehicle, and we're really in control of the mission at that point.
Test pilots, their task, proved that man could fly into orbit around the Earth and return live and well to talk about it.
There's always a balance of managing risk as you go forward to execute a test point and figuring out a way to collect the data. We hear a sound. Okay, is that sound an expected sound? Or we see a light, is that light an expected light? What's the source of it? Does it sync up with something else that's going on or not? So trying to dissect all of that in real time in your head is, a lot of things happen like that on launching up a vehicle.
From St. Anne, Missouri, he is an Air Force colonel and flight test engineer. He flew aboard Space Shuttle Endeavour twice. Introducing NASA astronaut Bob Behnken.
My career at NASA has kind of spanned a couple of decades at this point. I arrived with the class of 2000. Went through the training program, primarily focused on the Space Shuttle and the International Space Station, learning those systems. Having launched a couple times on vehicles, the second time was definitely different than the first time. You can feel a little bit guilty of, hey, should I study one more thing? Is there one more piece of information I should get? Am I really prepared or not? So that's definitely different between where I was on my first flight and where I'm at right now. It's been really interesting, I think, for both my wife and I to have gone through the process of seeing each other launch in space. I've seen her take that risk and had it be in front of her, and I've done that to her. And there's just something different about watching a rocket launch when there are people on board. You feel a little bit differently about the pit of your stomach, and I can only tell you it's multiplied significantly when it's somebody that you know, and then somebody, of course, that's a family member. It's even multiplied more.
For me personally, as a spouse, watching everything that Bob has put into this over the last 5 years, the dedication that he's shown, the perseverance is pretty special for both of us. Though the way our minds work, it won't be until sort of the mission is complete that you have really a chance to savor it and celebrate it. This is a huge accomplishment for an Air Force flight test engineer to be part of the demonstration mission of a brand new vehicle. It's going to be amazing.
Without a partner that has that same appreciation, I think it can be challenging for some folks. There's a lot of work and a lot of time that takes away from family that my spouse appreciates, and I love her for that. Really, my role on the Demo 2 mission is to make sure that we get this vehicle tested and evaluated so that we can move on to more operational missions at the International Space Station. We've got a lot of objectives on board the vehicle that we need to accomplish to really make sure that it's good to go. We'll make sure all those systems are working during the test flight so that the future missions will have them available even if they don't plan to utilize them. Through years of the NASA team helping to share that experience and teaching them the lessons that we've learned by going through this, now there's another capability in the U.S. besides NASA to operate something of this magnitude. When is the last time humans launched on a new vehicle? Certainly on the American side, it's been several decades. Now we're at a time when we've got multiple vehicles under development. It's a great time from a space exploration time frame just to see all that happening, and it's because of this nurturing of the environment, being able to pull in a wider group of people who can contribute towards human spaceflight. It's a super cool time. On a deeply personal level, I'm really excited that my son is going to get a chance to see me launch into space. Being an astronaut has been a little bit of an abstraction thing for him because he's seen me do it in old videos, but he hasn't seen me do it for real, and so I'm excited for him to see this launch. I want to thank the entire Commercial Crew Program team that's worked together to get to this point where we've got vehicles in the launch pad ready to head to the International Space Station.
Well, that was interesting.
We're just over 49 and a half minutes away from launch of the Falcon 9 carrying Dragon to the space station. Right now, the launch director and the launch team are preparing for a readiness for launch poll. In this poll, the 13 members of the launch team will electronically indicate a go for launch. This is also the go for propellant load. Now, we're going to hear that in a couple of minutes, so while we wait, we are tracking you watching from all over the country. We're seeing large numbers of you logging on or tuning in from coast to coast, as well as around the world. We want to know, is this your first time watching a launch live? If not, how many have you seen before? Tell us using the hashtag LaunchAmerica from your favorite social media website. As for me, this isn't my first one. I've seen a lot, but everyone is exciting. Now, coming up, we're going to go into a readiness poll, as I mentioned. Currently, right now, on other nets, the SpaceX launch director is checking to verify the Dragon team is ready and that the NASA launch management team is ready. They'll come back at about T-minus 47 minutes with instructions to the SpaceX Falcon 9 team to make their final assessments. Then they log into the procedure. It's a little different than the old days where you hear a go, 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 position by position, all up and down the row. In this electronic age, everybody just clicks on whether they go or no go. The launch director will then, at T-minus 45 minutes, summarize the end of the poll and will then provide instructions for the team. At the same time, we will begin getting ready for the crew access arm retraction, and we'll show you that on one of the screens that we've got up.
Alright. T-minus 47 minutes, 37 seconds.
Now, currently, we are continuing to monitor the weather. The weather is still red. It is improving. We're looking at one cell between the radar and the pad. We're keeping our fingers crossed that conditions will improve, but we're going to be watching that for about another 15 minutes. So it looks like we're going to be good to begin propellant load once we hear the polls, but we still have to get the get the range green so that we can actually do the launch in just 47 minutes from now. Let's listen to the countdown net for a moment.
Well, I sure hope the weather does hold out for them. Imagine, doing all this preparation only for the weather to say, no, you can't go. It is, for me, it's currently 2:47 p.m., almost 3 p.m., but they will be launching at 3:30 p.m. or 3:33 p.m.
36 minutes, 10 seconds before launch. Didn't hear any significant chatter coming over countdown 1.
Yes, launch director, the countdown net. Poll is complete, and we have a go to proceed with propellant load.
Alright, here we go.
Launch control, proceed with swinging the crew arm. Arming crew arm movement for T-minus 45 minutes. Thank you, launch control. A reminder in control room on hold and launch escape protocol. For non-urgent no-go conditions, breach CE or LD, and it will approve aborting the launch auto sequence and proceed to launch abort. For urgent issues affecting the safety of the operation, operators shall call hold on the countdown net. Launch control will abort the launch auto sequence immediately and proceed into the launch abort auto sequence. Operators shall also advise the launch director whether structural breakup or fire is imminent or occurring for Dragon manual escape flight rules. Remainder on fire alarm instructions. Here in Fire Room 4, the event of a fire alarm, key operators, previously briefed, will remain at their post while the alarm is evaluated. In the event that personal safety is threatened, we will evacuate to the south-facing emergency exit, which leads directly outside. One final reminder, there will be arming the launch escape system momentarily. All personnel, please stay in your seats from now through orbit insertion and Dragon separation from the second stage.
Crew access arm retract has started.
And you've heard Mike Taylor, the SpaceX launch director, give instructions to the team. We've also just heard the call. The crew access arm retraction is underway. Great view from the camera inside the
And there goes the arm that they used to get into the vehicle.
One of the major events necessary to get down to T0. The next one coming up will be arming of the escape system on the Dragon capsule. Now, right now, the next plan for Falcon 9, T-minus 35 minutes, we will begin loading propellant onto the first and second stages. Now, currently, Falcon 9's looking good. Dragon's looking good. The range continues to be go for launch in terms of the clearance around the launch pad, both the air and the sea space. Looking at the flight corridor, the ground stations, the NASA tracking and data relay center.
Will it land by itself? Yeah, for the most part. The way that the first stage is going to work is it's going to detach after it's empty. It'll return to a barge that's out in the ocean and land on that. And the capsule itself, once they're done with their mission, will also land in the ocean. But that'll be within anywhere between 30 to 90 days.
Rules for loading propellant. That's what the expectation is, but we're going to continue to watch that. So fingers crossed, but right now coming up at T-minus 43 minutes, 18 seconds and counting. Everything but the weather's go, and the weather is trending in the right direction. So we've got a fingers crossed here. At this time, we're going to send it back over to Kennedy Space Center as the action is picking up on the launch pad.
Thanks, John I. Now that countdown clock is continuing to tick, and we are 42 minutes and 46 seconds away from launch. And as you just saw, the crew arm retracted. That is the last major visual milestone before liftoff. And we should be hearing out on the net soon confirmation that the launch escape system is armed. When that happens, all 8 of the Super Draco throttle valves are opened, which means that those engines can ignite.
For second 7.
Okay. So that means those 8 throttle valves are opened, and if those Super Dracos needed to fire in order for Dragon to escape off of the pad, they could.
And so things running just a little bit ahead of schedule right now.
Field lead is complete.
Now we just saw the crew access arm retract just a minute ago. We saw NASA astronauts Doug Hurley.
In 7.2, our visors are closed, and we're arming the launch escape system.
So we just heard the astronauts confirm that they are about to arm the launch escape system. That happens just before fueling begins, which we expect to happen in just a couple of minutes. We saw Bob and Doug suit up a little over 3 hours ago. Then we watched them drive out to Launch Complex 39A. They were assisted by the SpaceX ground team with Crew Dragon ingress. That happened a little before 2 o'clock this afternoon. And then we saw the spacecraft hatch close. And again, just a minute ago, we saw the crew access arm retract. We just heard that the crew armed the launch escape system, and in just a few minutes we are going to hear the call that they have started propellant loading.
Launch escape system is verified armed.
Alright, so
So we just heard that verification that the launch escape system is armed.
We're switching to Jan 2.
Alright, so the launch escape system is armed, meaning if they need to abort in emergencies, they can now do so safely.
And we are going to send it over to Hawthorne to take us through prop loading. Jesse?
From the parachutes to the launch escape system, SpaceX has designed Crew Dragon and Falcon 9 to be the safest launch vehicle ever flown. And joining us today, we have SpaceX's Nick Picone, who was our mission manager for our in-flight abort mission earlier this year and currently works on the Starlink team. Thanks for joining us, Nick.
Hey, Jesse. I'm here at the Launch and Landing Recovery Center with the recovery team and our Dragon ground operations team monitoring the launch.
Awesome. Can you tell us more about the critical safety features on this new version of Dragon?
Sure. So Dragon 2 was designed with long-term reuse and reliability in mind. So fundamentally, there are multiple layers of redundancy to any of the failure modes that we could conceive of, that NASA could conceive of when we were working to design and test this vehicle over the past few years. But in the event that we encounter an unforeseen failure mode or multiple failures which push us outside of our design space, Dragon also has backup systems and operational controls intended to keep Bob and Doug safe. I'm sure you've heard a lot about it today, but the launch escape system is the primary backup system that we have from the moment that the vehicle is here on being fueled all the way up until orbital insertion. At a high level, the launch escape system, in the event of a major Falcon anomaly or emergency, will terminate Falcon thrust, separate Dragon from Falcon, and it'll use Dragon's 8 Super Draco engines to quickly pull the vehicle away from any kind of Falcon anomaly.
Now, you've talked a lot about the launch escape system. How exactly is that activated? Is it autonomous? Is it manually activated?
Definitely. So for this system to work as designed, you have to remember that the vehicle could be flying at hundreds or thousands of miles an hour through the lower atmosphere. So it's really important that it's extremely fast and highly reliable with very low chance of false positives. The launch escape system fundamentally is set to look at a set of pre-programmed criteria which are on board the vehicle. Dragon and Falcon are looking at high rate telemetry, looking for abnormal vehicle dynamics, loss of communication between critical systems, or manual commanding. Our launch director and chief engineer, who we've heard a lot from today, are capable of sending a manual command to Dragon to initiate a launch escape, and Bob and Doug are also always able to actuate the launch escape handle and initiate a launch escape themselves as well. Now that the system is armed, all of this is currently active on the vehicle.
Wow, it sounds like there's a lot that goes into it. And we did have an in-flight abort test earlier this year to test this out. Can you tell us what we learned from that test?
Definitely. It was possibly the most flight-like test of an orbital class booster in history. It was a fully flight-like test using a full Falcon 9 rocket, which we had to knowingly destroy in order to get this fully integrated system. For folks who didn't get a chance to see it, the vehicle followed a normal crew launch trajectory about a minute and a half into flight. We had Dragon autonomously trigger the launch escape system based on a reconfiguration of those triggers I was just talking about. Thankfully, we had we continued through flight, had a successful parachute deployment and splashdown, and we did see Falcon rather spectacularly blow up about 10 seconds after separation. It's important to recognize that all of that happens from command to actual separation of the vehicle in under half a second.
Wow, yeah, that sounds amazing. Thank you so much, Nick, for joining us and talking through those details with us. Enjoy the launch today. So we're going to send it back to KSC with Lauren.
Thank you, Jesse. We are about a minute and a half away from propellant load. At T-minus 35 minutes, we should hear the call out on the nets that propellant load has started. So that's about a minute and 13 seconds away.
Alright. So now they're about to start pumping the rocket full of fuel.
moment when I was sitting in the vehicle, when we retracted everything, when all the prop was getting loaded up. I was just going through my crew notebook. I was thinking about, what my first step would be if there was a malfunction, because usually everything goes nominally when you fly to space, but you have to think about the things that you have to take care of, the first steps you have to take care of. And on my mission, I was calling out the abort calls, like if you lost an engine, where we go next, when the different abort calls around the country and around the world. So I think that's what those guys are probably thinking about now, and just really getting ready for this mission to go off.
Absolutely, and we're just now about 20 seconds from when we expect propellant loading to start. Again, that's fueling of the rocket.
All right, we're getting close. We should hear that call out any second now on the nets. So let's listen in.
Propellant load has started.
Fantastic. So prop load has started. We've started loading liquid oxygen on stage 1 and stage 2. Liquid oxygen and RP1, which is our rocket grade kerosene. So now that we are 34 minutes and 42 seconds away from the first launch of astronauts into orbit from American soil since 2011, we know that the launch escape system is armed, which happened just before fueling. Dragon prop load happened weeks ago, actually just a few miles down the road at what we call Dragonland. And those propellants, which are MMH, or monomethylhydrazine, that's our fuel, and NTO, or nitrogen tetroxide, that's our oxidizer, those not only feed the Draco engines that propel Dragon on orbit, but they also supply those 8 Super Draco engines of the launch escape system. So I have one right here, a little model. It doesn't come off the stand.
Don't break it, Lauren.
All right, it's very nice. As you can see, the Dragon is actually broken up into 4 quads, and each quad has 2 of the Super Draco engines for a total of 8 of them. And as I mentioned, they are biprop engines. They have MMH, and NTO is their oxidizer. Now, most abort systems from past space vehicles, I believe like Soyuz, Mercury, Apollo, they all had a pointy escape tower on top, where there was essentially like a mini rocket engine or a series of rocket engines on top. And if they weren't used, that escape tower would have to jettison itself from the vehicle. If it was used, it would be used to lift the vehicle off of the rocket. Well, Dragon is a little bit different in that its escape system is actually integrated into the vehicle, and that's great for a couple of reasons. One less thing you have to jettison on a nominal flight, and so they're pretty dormant, just those throttle valves open unless they're used, and hopefully they never have to be. The other thing that offers you is the ability to escape from the pad all the way to orbit. Because if you jettisoned your escape system prior to that, you couldn't. That's a little Dragon there.
Yeah, we're much safer design.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Again, the launch escape system is armed. That protects Bob and Doug so that if something were to go wrong, they can shoot off the pad away from the rocket and parachute to safety in the ocean. That is such a crucial safety capability. And so now we want to go over to Hawthorne for an operational update with John.
Thanks, Marie. We are counting down those final minutes. Everything is still looking good on the Falcon 9 and the Dragon vehicles for an on-time launch, but weather is trending the wrong way right now. We're keeping our ears open in case we hear that the weather is going to be no-go for the rest of the count. Right now, we are counting down at T-minus 32 minutes.
Stage 1 locks.
Falcon 9 did begin propellant load at T-minus 35 minutes, right on time. The propellants we use on Falcon 9 are a fuel, which is rocket-grade kerosene, also called RP1, refined petroleum. We use an oxidizer, and that's the super chilled liquid oxygen, or LOX as we call it. Those two propellants come together, but they don't light, so we need an ignition source to complete the fire triangle. For this, Falcon 9 uses a fluid called T-tip. You might see that just before first stage ignition, or maybe later in the second stage ignition. You get a green-colored flame as the T-tip comes out into the oxygen, and that ignites the main engines right before the rocket takes off or the second stage engine lights. Now, currently in the fueling, RP1 fuel is about 10% full on the first stage. That's the bottom 2/3 of the stack of the vehicle you can see on the left. The first stage is that long white cylinder at the bottom, plus that black cylinder called the inner stage. That's the entire first stage that we're loading with LOX and RP1 kerosene. That's the part that comes back to Earth. The second stage just above it, the white cylinder, and then above that will be the Dragon trunk and the capsule. Now currently, the second stage is also loading fuel with RP1. That's about 8% full right now. We are loading liquid oxygen on the first stage. The second stage liquid oxygen load will begin at T-minus 16 and a half minutes if the weather cooperates. So LOX loading will then continue on both the first and second stage until the last few minutes of the countdown. Helium loading is also underway into pressure vessels on the first, second stage. We use that to pressurize the tanks in flight as the propellant is being pulled out by the Merlin turbo pumps.
Well, hopefully the weather cooperates. How much would that suck if at the last minute they decide to abort mission because of the weather?
The sounds inside the Dragon capsule were recorded. So as part of the training, the sounds of the propellant loading were played back to acclimate the crew to what they're experiencing now. Stopping and listening to some discussion on one of the back nets, trying to track where we are with the weather criteria. We're just passing another weather gate right now, trying to see whether or not the conditions are go. In certain situations, when the weather is no-go, you have to wait 30 minutes, and we are now inside of 30 minutes. But if the cloud moves away, if the conditions improve, we may be able to continue the countdown for another 14 minutes and reassess. So we're waiting to see whether or not we can continue the count. Currently, we are. The range, they're ready to support with no problems in the air. And the
Are we go for launch? So far, yes. We'll have to wait and see how the weather holds, though.
We're going to continue to listen. And as a reminder, today we have an instantaneous launch time. So at this point, if we hear a halt for any reason, we're going to have to stand down and target our backup launch opportunity on May 30th.
Demo 2, Bob and Doug's flight to station will take about 19 hours, and their journey is fairly similar to the trip our cargo Dragon makes back and forth to the International Space Station, with two noticeable differences: docking and splashdown.
As we await T-minus 0, just a little over 28 minutes from now, ground operations team's just doing those final series of system checks, making sure both Dragon and Falcon 9 are ready for liftoff, and really keeping an eye on that weather. You're just continuing to get live views of the teams. You've got Falcon 9 and Dragon on your left, and then Bob and Doug on the right as they prepare.
Cabby, shut the hell up.
Once we hit T0 and a successful launch occurs, we will watch Falcon 9 and Dragon make their ascent until Falcon 9 and first and second stages separate and send Dragon on its way to the space station.
And once it gets on orbit, mission operators will prepare Dragon for on-orbit operations, where Dragon will execute a series of burns that are going to gradually raise its orbit to align more closely with the International Space Station. You're seeing some of that track in the animation on your screen right now. After doing enough of those burns, they'll put Dragon... Oh, sounds like we're going to get a weather update real quick for the crew.
Go ahead, Spacer.
Yeah, we're currently just evaluating a constraint on the field mill rule, which looks at lightning energy dissipation. We expect to have an update at about T-minus 20, and more information there on whether we would be able to continue into the prop load or scrub at that time.
Okay, Jay, thanks for the update. We appreciate it.
Copy, so I'll give you some more words in about 6 minutes.
Okay, so it sounds like we're going to find out in about 6 minutes if we're going to have enough time. And John, I was referring to a couple of those weather situations where we have to have a certain amount of time. In this case, with the field mills, about 15 minutes. So they have until about 16 minutes and 30 seconds to really make sure that we're going to have enough time for that to dissipate. So we're going to be listening for that weather update in just a couple of minutes, but it is going to be a pretty interesting trip uphill for them once they actually get on orbit.
and a very exciting countdown with 6 minutes to figure out if we are launching today. But targeting back to what we were talking about, next Dragon will make its approach and actually dock with the space station. This is a very different process from what we've seen with Dragon cargo deliveries in the past, which used a process called berthing. And berthing requires the spacecraft to approach the station and then stop so a crew member can maneuver the station's robotic arm to capture the spacecraft. Docking on this version of Dragon can be done autonomously.
Stage 2 cryo-healing load started.
Autonomously with no crew aboard the station. It's typically a faster process, both when arriving and leaving, but it does still require pinpoint accuracy to approach safely.
Cabby, no. What they'll do is they'll give them a update in about 6 minutes or about 5 minutes now on weather and fuel. The launch, if everything goes according to plan, the launch will happen in T-minus 25 minutes.
Preparing to return home, following successful completion of Dragon's test objectives and cargo loading operations, the crew will close out the cabin, perform final system checks, and configure the vehicle for undocking. Once the automated undocking sequence is complete, Dragon will complete 2 departure burns using its Draco engines, pushing it away from the space station.
And then after Dragon departs the station, it's ready for its trip home. And that'll have deorbit entry and landing and a number of other operations. If you're looking at this animation, it might look like we're playing the one we played originally in reverse, because that's kind of how it goes, but just a little bit quicker. All of the operations following the final departure maneuver will include things like trunk separation, closing that nose cone again, executing a deorbit burn, and once they're inside the atmosphere, deploying drogue and then main parachutes, and then finally splashing down off the Florida coast, at which teams will move in, get Bob and Doug up out of the water, and get them out of the capsule once they're on the boat. So, we have 4 minutes now until we get that next expected weather update. Let's go down now to the team at Kennedy. Marie?
All right, thanks, Dan. If you're just joining us, we are now T-minus 23 minutes and 48 seconds from the first launch of astronauts to the International Space Station from U.S. soil in 9 years. We're going to find out in less than 4 minutes if the weather looks good for that. And this will mark the beginning of a new era where more people will be able to fly to space than ever before. In fact, we took a poll a little bit earlier to ask you if you had the opportunity to fly to space, would you go? And 86% of those of you watching answered that you would go to space.
Well, okay, that sounds interesting. Do you guys want to do that? Put in the comments. Would you guys go to space? I know I would. I absolutely would take the opportunity to.
Yeah, and we are really thrilled to see all the folks watching along online. I know we certainly hope that that this is a go, but we're going to hear a little bit of a weather update in less than 3 minutes now. And Leland, I know they're waiting for a weather update, and they've come, almost all the way down the count. What do you think Bob and Doug are thinking about right now?
We on STS-129, we were having some weather problems, and I think we were getting close to the countdown, and then it seemed like the sky just cleared up right above our heads. We saw it, and we knew where we were going. And we always know that you can have any types of delays, fuel prop delays, all kinds of things that can happen. But we've trained over and over and over again for these types of scenarios, and so we want to be safe. We want to be safe for our families, and we'll do this another day if it doesn't work with the weather.
I love that John I always says weather. It's that thing that everybody talks about, but no one can do anything about it. And it is this interesting thing of just, succumbing to Mother Earth. She's going to tell us if we can go or not today.
Well, if it happens, look at it this way. Bob and Doug got one really great rehearsal in, right?
It's always best to practice and practice and practice, yes.
So again, we're less than 2 minutes now from that weather update that is going to go directly to Bob and Doug, and we will quiet down so we can listen in for that, because I know we can't wait to find out what that is, and those of you watching that have been following along, we are eagerly awaiting to hear whether the weather is going to be a showstopper today.
Alright, so in just a few minutes we'll hear if it's going to happen or not. Fingers crossed, y'all.
These clouds can seem really deceiving see the blue skies peeking through, and you think everything's fine, but you just don't know. That's why we have those launch weather officers.
Absolutely, and I know, we've talked about it before, but it's not just the weather in Florida that they're looking at. They've got to look at weather downrange. If they were to have an abort in flight and they needed to come down somewhere in the ocean, they need to consider what the weather's like out there, because recovery teams have to go out and get them in a situation like that. So there's so many variables, and that's why not just with this flight, but with every human space flight we've had.
All right, 30 seconds to find out.
Chance of a scrub, because you do have so much criteria that you have to meet. And we're going to listen in now. We're just seconds away from a weather update.
Stage 2, RP1 load complete.
That is liquid oxygen you see venting off the rocket. That's completely normal and expected. We're standing by for a weather update.
Unless you can give us another 10 minutes, I don't think we're going to get there with any of the rules today.
I'm going to give you 10 minutes.
I mean, another 10 minutes past T0. 16:45 local. I think we'll probably be clear on all the rules, but not quite going to make it for this.
Okay. We're going to check back in in about 2 minutes, and then I'll call it up at about 17 minutes.
Okay. Yeah, there's some of them are starting to count down, but we still have one above 2,000. So if that gets below.
And that didn't sound great right there. That was the weather net going out, but we're still standing by for a final decision.
Alright, I guess all we can do is wait now.
And we're going to continue to listen in for an update, but in the meantime, we're going to go over to John Innsbrucker at SpaceX headquarters in California. John?
And Dragon SpaceX on weather. We're still
T-minus 18 minutes and counting.
LD is
we are still right on weather.
Expect an update from LD.
We're waiting in about another minute for one final check with weather. We're going to check at T-minus 17 minutes possibly. We don't really expect that things will have improved. The weather officer was not optimistic that the weather would clear up that rapidly. We did hear the launch director, Mike Taylor, joke that if we could move 10 more minutes past the T0, weather conditions may improve, but Mike was not able to do that. We have an instantaneous window today. So at 17 minutes, we want to make that call, because shortly after that, we will begin loading liquid oxygen onto the second stage. So if we're not going to have the opportunity to launch, if the clock's going to run out, stand by.
Continue to violate a couple different weather rules that we now do not expect to clear in time to allow for a launch today. Go ahead and today's launch attempt, launch control. Go ahead and end the launch auto sequence and proceed into the launch abort auto sequence. Launch abort has started.
Yeah, I know. I'm disappointed too.
Unfortunately, we are not going to launch today. You are go for 5.100 launch scrub.
5.100, it was a good effort by the teams, and we understand, and we'll meet you there.
Copy out.
We've heard the call from the crew. They have been informed. Launch director Mike Taylor has called a scrub for the day. And
looks like it's not happening.
When the Dragon team informed Bob and Doug, they said we gave it a good try, what they understand, and we are here to try another day. So right now we did officially hold the clock. It looks like a T-minus 16 minutes, 54 seconds. The launch automatic sequence that controls the Falcon 9, the loading of propellants, the cycling of valves, that is also stopped. We now proceed into what is a normal scrub sequence for us. We practice this every launch. So now we move into safely taking the propellants, the pressurization gases back off the first and second stages. As things get into a safe configuration, then we will disarm the escape system on Dragon, and we'll bring the crew access arm back around the spacecraft. So right now, we got down to just inside 17 minutes. The hardware was working very well on both Dragon and spacecraft. We had the fuel loading going on. We had liquid oxygen loading going on. Everything but second stage. And the weather just needed a little bit more time to clear the conditions. We didn't have that time because we had an instantaneous window. And so with that, SpaceX launch director had to call upon the input from weather, had to call a scrub for the day per the safety rules that we have for this flight. So right now the team is undergoing the post-scrub operations on both Dragon as well as Falcon 9,
Alright.
working with the range. No issues being reported right now as we start to go through that sequence. Everything looks good. And Dan, we had a good webcast going here until the very end, so we'll look at it as
Let's look at when it could possibly be.
last Saturday we did a dry one, I should say, and today we've done a wet dress rehearsal. But sorry, we just couldn't get there, Dan.
Yeah, thanks, John. And obviously we can't control the weather. We came right down to the wire there, hoping we could just squeeze in between those cloud systems to get a launch today, but it wasn't to be. It doesn't mean we're done. We're going to have another attempt coming up in just 3 days, so we're going to be doing this all over.
Alright, so 3 days, so yes, Saturday.
On the 30th, and that launch attempt is going to be coming at 3:22 p.m. Eastern Time, so a little bit earlier in the day.
Saturday, 3:22 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll try this again at that point.
So we're going to feel a lot of deja vu, I think, on Saturday.
We'll try it again then.
Safety is always first, so if weather
Guys, obviously I'm not in control, so I'm sorry that, I feel sorry for them mostly. Getting down to the wire and they couldn't launch, but we'll try again on Saturday. We'll see what we can do about another live stream, and we'll try to watch it then. I hope you guys have at least, enjoyed what it was, learned something new. Like I said, we'll try again on Saturday. And as always, I hope you guys have enjoyed. If you guys want to continue to watch this, you guys can find it on NASA's website, or NASA's YouTube channel. And like I said, as always, I hope you guys have enjoyed.
Back the way they came, and then we'll be back to crew quarters for Bob and Doug for a few more days.